The real danger in the ocean is a huge nuclear submarine. You may not even realize that it is floating below you, but on board there is a thermonuclear weapon capable of destroying an entire continent. Quiet, unnoticeable, she can wait for her order for a whole year, simply lying on the ocean floor. It would seem that such formidable weapons should be prohibited, but recent events suggest otherwise. Just recently, a Russian doomsday submarine was spotted in the Arctic. It surfaced in the middle of the ice, stayed in this position for several hours and dived back. An interesting fact is that Putin himself has not been seen on TV for a long time, and where should he hide if not in the permafrost, armed with nuclear missiles? The nuclear submarine BS-329 Belgorod was originally built as a submarine of the Anti project. It was supposed to be quite standard, not particularly distinguished. Its closest analog is the Kursk submarine, which sank in 2000 in the Barents Sea. I don't know whether the Kursk disaster influenced the engineers or some other factor, but Belgorod was heavily modified during the construction process. An additional 30-meter compartment was cut into its central part, where the missiles were previously located. Thus, the length of the nuclear-powered ship was more than 180 meters, which became a record. To give you a better idea of its size, take a 9-story building, lay it on the ground and do this 6 times in a row. That's how big it is. As a result, the 180-meter Belgorod submarine is the longest existing submarine. It is 10 meters larger than the American ones, Ohio, which are considered the most powerful at the moment. However, will Belgorod be able to compete with them? This is very likely, because the Russian boat was lengthened not only in pursuit of the record, but in order to accommodate the world's first nuclear-armed stealth torpedoes, as well as equipment for collecting intelligence. In addition, thermonuclear torpedoes are not only located inside the submarine, but also float freely on the bottom of the seas and oceans awaiting commands. At the bottom of the submarine there is a special compartment, which can release repair drones to service these torpedoes. Strategic nuclear submarines can hide from view on the ocean floor for a week or even a month. They could travel several kilometers to the Atlantic or Pacific coasts of America and strike. Some experts insist that Poseidon torpedoes are capable of traveling hundreds of kilometers underwater and causing nuclear tsunamis. Both US and Russian officials have said the torpedoes could conceivably deliver multi-megaton warheads, triggering radioactive waves that would render swathes of the coast uninhabitable for decades. And this seems quite realistic when we are talking about a 20-meter underwater missile weighing 100 tons. It really escalates the danger of having such a terrible weapon in the hands of not the smartest person. And, by the way, it is quite possible that the surfacing of Belgorod in the Arctic is just a maneuver to attract the attention of the US Army. 2 accompanying submarines were spotted on a route from St. Petersburg towards Antarctica. Their path lay through Estonia, Sweden, and Denmark. Sometimes another object flashes on the radar, but it quickly disappeared, so it was attributed to a software error. However, in the area between Norway and Great Britain, 2 large silhouettes underwater were clearly visible. The Royal Navy immediately set out to check and discovered the Russian submarines Severodvinsk and Vapor, which, as if nothing had happened, surfaced. Of course, Great Britain did not like this, and the military quickly stopped the submarines and turned them back towards Russia. These actions caused a great stir in the United States, and they tracked the routes of the submarines and also sent drones there for reconnaissance. As a result, the drones found the location of the same doomsday submarine, which was just on the surface in the Arctic, where a Russian ship was transferring food on board. These actions alarmed NATO so much that they immediately sent their navy to the waters closest to Russia. There are 23 US ships alone, and all of them are in the Black Sea. Not a funny mess, and it was only provoked by 2 submarines, or 3, but Severodvinsk and Vapor are nuclear submarines armed to the teeth. Among the arsenal of weapons, powerful torpedoes stand out for destroying targets present in the water, and maneuvering cruise missiles against surface enemies. They're very capable and very quiet, so that's the most important thing, I think, in submarine warfare. In previous years, nuclear submarines making interfleet transitions sailed on the surface along the entire coast of Norway, probably due to the ship's lack of combat readiness. It has now been confirmed by the Royal Navy that they sailed underwater and then surfaced, indicating that both submarines are combat ready. The Russians have increased their presence in all waters around Europe and the Atlantic. Both boats use the power of a nuclear reactor to be able to stay underwater for more than 3 months. This fact alone seems suspicious, because why then would such a long-lived submarine surface ahead of schedule, and even right under the gun of a Norwegian ship? There are only two options. Either Severodvinsk and Vepr do not correspond to the stated characteristics, or their surfacing is another provocation. If the second option is correct, then the idea was truly a success. After all, in response to this window dressing, the United States sent 24 of its best ships to the waters neighboring Russia. Having learned about this, the Kremlin sounded the alarm, because at least 23 battleships are aggressively approaching closer and closer. Today it is known for sure that the NATO ships entering the Black Sea are American missile destroyers like the USS Ross. This is a huge 154-meter steel monster stuffed with a whole bunch of advanced weapons. It carries at least 2 launchers, whose total ammunition capacity is 100 guided missiles. Each of these projectiles has its own radar homing head. It is capable of independently identifying the enemy and transmitting the data to the rest of the missile. Thus, exactly as much explosive will fly to each target as is needed to destroy it. In addition to missiles, the USS Ross is also armed with a 127-meter Mark 45 artillery mount. Every shot that leaves a crater on the Earth, and even the most durable bunker will fall apart from a few hits. The ship also has something to show against air targets. 2 automatic cannons, 25 mm caliber, and 4 heavy machine guns that will riddle any aircraft. And at the head of this machine gun gang is the fastest firing gun in the world, the Phalanx CIWS. Yes, this is the same pseudo-laser that you have definitely heard about. Imagine just one such ship can destroy an entire enemy fleet, but what 23 are capable of is scary to even think about. Naturally, destroyers like the USS Ross are also prepared to destroy underwater targets. To do this, they are equipped with 2 torpedo tubes at once, so Russian submarines better fear for their integrity and safety. You see what is happening in Russia and what is happening around you. Think carefully, this is truly the future of your country. The only aircraft carrier in Russia, the Admiral Kuznetsov, is preparing to help its underwater brothers, only it is able to withstand the American fleet, or it cannot. Surprisingly, it was precisely at this most important moment, so important. The ship just took over and caught fire. Yes, don't be surprised, Admiral Kuznetsov in general often suffers for one reason or another. Either a crane will fall on it, then a rocket will fly in, and now there will be a fire. It is possible that it was sabotage, but with respect for the truthful information, let's say that the fire was successfully extinguished and it did not cause any major damage, but it definitely caused panic and stress. It would be terribly humiliating for the Kremlin if disaster happens again. What makes this aircraft carrier stand out is, firstly, its size, length 300 meters, width 72, that's like 3 football fields. This giant is designed to transport 28 fighters and 24 combat helicopters. I think you understand perfectly well that such a quantity of armed equipment is really a great threat to the enemy, especially if the aircraft are armed with the most powerful hypersonic Dagger missile systems. This projectile is capable of reaching a speed of 4,000 meters per second, flying at an altitude of 20 kilometers and delivering deadly strikes to the most key enemy positions. Although Admiral Kuznetsov and his hypersonic daggers look scary, they are not able to withstand nuclear submarines, so even the oldest of them can destroy this miracle of engineering. The main purpose of this ship is precisely to attract attention, because this was an unstable element in the image of Russia as a great power equal to the United States. For example, the same submarine K-19 may well resist Kuznetsov. It was the first nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine and Russia's answer to the USS Nautilus, but production and testing were rushed and even its captain did not believe she was combat-ready. So it happened, and over time it generally turned into a nuclear time bomb. And that's why. In the spring of 1961, a Soviet K-19 was tasked with conducting an exercise in the North Atlantic, but suffered a malfunction mid-maneuver when a coolant tube burst. This became a huge danger, even greater than anyone could have imagined. The submarine's tilt angle could reach 40 to 50 degrees, which would become very dangerous. At the time of the incident, K-19 was operating near one of the NATO bases in the Atlantic, and the explosion, even if accidental, could have led the United States and allies to believe that the Soviet Union was trying to start a full-scale nuclear war. The captain, having learned about the leak, immediately asked volunteers to enter the reactor compartments to fix the leak. Not having enough equipment to protect yourself. The whole team knew that the one who volunteered would not return. Nevertheless, about 20 brave men immediately volunteered. Luckily, the temporary cooling system the team had put together worked well, and then at the last moment the Russian ship S-2710 showed up to evacuate the crew. The K-19 submarine was towed back to base. However, the engineering team received significant doses of radiation through poisonous gas and steam while installing the improvised device. Although a complete disaster was avoided, it cost the volunteers their lives for 2 years. Although the submarine returned to service several months after the incident, misfortune followed it wherever it went. In 1969, she collided with the American submarine USS Gatu, and 3 years later a fire on board resulted in 32 casualties. In the end, the power of the nuclear submarine fleet remains amazing, but what was the mission these days? And this video has come to an end. Thank you for watching this far. We will be immensely grateful if you subscribe to the channel and write your opinion about the video in the comments. Have a good day everyone and see you soon.